Something was brought to my attention. I was watching this video. It was about the economy, but it was some woman ranting about Donald Trump, the war, and how America's going to be a third world because they're bringing in all of the rich people that are going to switch everything to crypto. They're going to become trillionaires, and a lot of people are going to become poor. And then she referenced the movie Sinners, saying, what happened? They let the vampires in and they ran amok and, killed everyone. And then I got to thinking, I was like, yeah, that is true. All of these rich billionaires who are 90% evil, not because they're billionaires, just because of the stuff that they do. You actually have a few billionaires here and there that are actually, Christian, but not just because they're Christian, but they actually do a lot of charity work and stuff like that. They give back. But if you watch the movie Sinners again, everyone that was in that bar or club or dance hall, whatever it was, they were, I want to say, like, they represented Americans. But the lady that let them in was Asian. The Asian lady let them in. Now, the Asian lady let them in was very symbolic. And she's the only one, the black lady, I don't want to put that clip in the front, but the black lady was talking about that let the vampires in. She didn't mention that she was Asian, but the Asian lady let the vampires into the country. And when you really look at America right now, the prominent ones who are actually doing well in America are Asians. But not just Asians, foreigners in general. You look at states all over the world, I don't see any black people owning gas stations, really owning subways, franchises, and stuff like that. But there's a huge Indian population that owns gas stations, huge Muslim population that owns gas stations. There's huge Asian populations that own a lot of the beauty product, hair stores, nail salons. They own a lot of businesses. For as long as, just black and white people being here, white people always had an advantage. They always had an advantage, which, you can't even count that. But I don't even see white-owned subways. There's no white-owned 7-Elevens like talking about. Even here, there's not a lot of white-owned businesses that I'm seeing, except maybe your restaurants. Like it's really mind-opening now. You got a lot of white people with real estate. You have some black people with real estate, but not like mega portfolios. There's a lot of Muslim, Indian, Asian, a lot of Mexicans have basically taken over labor jobs. But I don't want to just say labor jobs as in, grass cutting and stuff. I'm talking about, building the homes, remodeling, roofing, construction, handyman stuff. All of those are Mexican. Even on some of these job sites in the plants, You're seeing a lot of Mexicans who didn't grow up here. You know, if you were Mexican and you grew up here, you know, that's a different story. You know, they're more so of the culture. You know, America is a melting pot. It is a melting pot. But you're not seeing the ones that grew up here. You know, that's not how that's working. The Mexicans that I grew up with, they have the exact same story about how, you know, everyone's mad that everything's so high. You know, they're struggling with their credit score. You know, all of the same things as other Americans. But the foreigners who didn't grow up here, they own the businesses. They ain't struggling. They buying brand new cars. The only people that ain't really, I don't even want to say struggling, but just feeling the impact of the economy are the people who already had legacy businesses. And like I say, like the foreigners, or you just happen to make it to be a doctor or make it to be a successful lawyer. Because even, you know, I know people that got master's degrees in engineering, bartending. You know, I know women that got music education degrees stripping, and they play rare instruments like the harp and stuff. You know, that's the economy. But all of the foreigners, they're going to let in the elite vampires because they're going to vote a certain way. And they're going to take all of these kickbacks. They're going to suck all of this stuff dry. You know, America is being taken over. If you just look at YouTube, they just had a Somali scandal. You know, they're sucking that town dry. Then you had another town, you know, I don't like saying the name because it's going to get me banned, but the Small Hats in another town ruining it, you know, took all the funding from the public school, put it in their schools, and just stealing homes, which is wild. Like, you have a Second Amendment right in America. How could anyone steal your home? Like, come on now. But those immigrants are going to bring in the vampires. The vampires are already here. It's just going to be even more. You know, I'm going to throw the statistics and stuff in the video as a screenshot so y'all could see. But that's something to think about. Was that purposely done on sinners like that? Because none of the black people said to let them in. It was an immigrant. It wasn't a white lady either. Wasn't a white guy. It was the Asian immigrant that did it. You know, and I have to remember, I don't remember if she was Asian or Mexican. She was definitely an immigrant. And she let those vampires in. I think that was done on purpose. Because when that lady broke it down, it hit me just now. And I was like, I gotta make a video about that. I might make a part 2. But for the most part, man, that's wild. You know, they are the ones that gonna bring in the vampire elite to turn America into that third world. Gas about to be $5. All right, y'all, like, comment, subscribe.